Dave Anderson here with the Fisherman magazine. It's December 8th, and these are your headlines. First up, I have news of a striper blitz within the coverage area within the last week. We're also hearing about great bass fishing, especially largemouth bass fishing, in interior Massachusetts. And last up, just a continuation of the great tog and cod fishing that's going on in Rhode Island. Stay tuned for all that and more on this week's New England Fishing Forecast.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
So before we begin, I just got a couple news items for you. The first one comes by way of a Facebook post from Deep over in Connecticut. They are working with Massachusetts officials to conduct a study on overwintering striped bass in the Housatonic River. Anglers fishing the river may have noticed over the last week or so there's been these big orange buoys kind of scattered throughout the river that say research on them. And basically the study is they're tagging a bunch of striped bass in the river, and they're going to be testing their movements within the river, and also they're going to be trying to determine, how well they survive catch and release during the winter months. You may catch stripers with these little orange kind of nickel-sized tags on them, as you can see here in this photo, and they have asked that people send in the vitals of all these fish that they catch with those tags on them. Put the information up here on the screen for you guys. I don't want to speculate about what the results might be or why exactly they're conducting the study, but I think it's going to be very interesting to hear the results, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. Another thing that we're, of course, going to talk about is the giveaway. This one's going to wrap up on December 22nd. I do have a couple photos now that are definitely in the running to win these things. I actually have the plugs with me this time. We have this Goo Man bunker colored pikey for the first place prize winner. And we have this hydro twitch bait from Missouri, great plug, for the runner-up. And you just got to get those into me at danderson@thefisherman.com or text them to the number on the screen before the 22nd of December. And we'll make somebody's holiday a little bit brighter with some prizes. Up in Massachusetts, especially north of the Cape, the saltwater bite is definitely going bye-bye. So most guys are either dropping into hibernation mode or they're moving inland and fishing for freshwater species. The freshwater fishing we're hearing about up in that area is mostly panfish. A lot of guys getting calico bass, a lot of guys getting perch, white perch, and the results have been very good. Definitely some guys fishing for pike on the Merrimack, and results from what I've been hearing have been kind of up and down, but they are getting some fish. I talked to James. He said he spent most of his week in the woods and wouldn't be sending us a video, but he did pass along the fact that some of his contacts who live way up in New Hampshire are reporting that the ponds are starting to freeze over. So he's getting pretty excited about that. He's dusting the tip-ups off and getting ready to make a long drive to fish some hard water. So hopefully we'll hear from him within the next week or two about that. Heading down the coast from there, really the only saltwater action that we're hearing about is some of that haddock, pollock fishing. I actually haven't heard a specific report over the last week, but I know that that's ongoing and will continue to produce fish. A lot of the guys that are fishing, in the Plymouth area and out onto the Cape are reporting really good bass catches over the last week. I got this picture from Dan Southwick of a 6 and change. That's a solid fish. Pretty sure it was caught on a jig. And I'm hearing about some really nice fish, especially with these couple warmer days that we've had. It seems to have gotten them a little bit more active. So even inland, like up around Worcester, I've heard about some decent fish up there. But a lot of the best catches are coming from Plymouth and the Cape. And some really solid fish, some fish in that 3 to 6 pound range, have been reported by multiple people. So the fishing's looking good there. Other freshwater species that are popping off pretty good, of course, are trout. All the Plymouth ponds are putting out fish, and all those Cape ponds that get stocked every year are putting out good numbers. I was talking to Ian over at the Goose the other day, and he told me that he'd been getting some really nice brown trout in several of the ponds near the shop, fishing shiners at night. And then he also had some striped bass news, which kind of surprised me. But one night he just wasn't feeling the trout game, so he took his freshwater rod over to one of the local rivers and was able to pull 3 stripers. One of them was a 31-inch slot-sized fish. The other 2 were schoolies. And then he told me about a buddy of his who fished one of the beaches, and you almost ask yourself why he even tried, but it worked out for him. He ended up getting into a migrating school, one of these late schools, and landed a couple fish from the sand. So that's pretty interesting. The other thing that I'm hearing about is, well, what I should say is what I'm not hearing about are any tog. I have to believe that there are still blackfish to be caught in Massachusetts waters, but it seems like nobody's trying. If I was going to try to get one in Massachusetts, I'd definitely head out toward Westport, but I have to believe that you could get them in the deep holes around the Elizabeths or the Vineyard, or even up, along the Falmouth shoreline where you can find some of that rocky structure in some of those deep holes. I still think those fish are there, just nobody's really fishing for them. Up inside the canal, season's over. There's probably still going to be, 1 or 2 bass that runs through there, but no one's out there trying anymore. The only thing I've heard about from that region, saltwater-wise, is a few schoolies caught, like up in the Weweantic and up in Buttermilk Bay. Just some stragglers that are probably going to hang and hold over in some of those deep spots out there. Other than that, that's a story that I have for you guys in Massachusetts this week. Moving over into Rhode Island, things really haven't changed much. Still really good tog catches being reported. The fish are just kind of inching deeper, so now we're hearing about guys fishing like 75 to 110 feet. Still, though, hearing about some fish up shallower. It's kind of a weird scattered mix, but if I was going to target, one of these bigger fish, I'd definitely fish deeper and fish, noticeable structure. But the other thing that I heard this week was about a striped bass blitz at First Beach in Newport. There was no size relayed, which makes me think those fish had to be small. A lot of silver sides in the area, which was fueling that blitz, and that's another indicator that the fish were probably mostly on the smaller side. Now, some of you listening to this may think, wow, that sounds like a super anomaly, but the truth is, I can't remember what year it was. It was either 04 or 05. There was actually a Christmas Eve blitz on that same beach. First Beach is known for kind of holding some early and late fish, so it's one of those places where it's always worth looking at. As long as there's still bait around. So, once again, it's proven itself as a place that can hold some fish really late. Out at Block Island, definitely a lot of codfish being taken. We're still hearing about codfish taken inshore as well. There's so much bait around. We've got herring, we've got mackerel. Obviously, we've got the silver sides. We've got some peanut bunker still around, which is pulling some of these codfish in closer. So you don't have to head to Block to get into these codfish, but some of the better action is definitely happening on the east grounds. But we're hearing about these fish, especially bycatch for the guys fishing for tog, all along Newport, Jamestown, Narragansett. There's codfish mixed in all throughout that area, and you're probably going to find some sea bass in there as well. One thing that's pretty interesting is that all this bigger bait, all these herring and mackerel, have pulled in some giant bluefin too. So I haven't heard of one actually caught, but I've heard of sightings. I've heard of guys getting blown up, and not far off against it, 2 miles out. So that's pretty interesting. We'll see how long those stick around, or if anybody actually catches one. But when there's a lot of bait around, weird things can happen, and that's definitely happening right now. For a little bit more on what's going on the bottom fishing world, let's toss it over now to Captain John Lee from JL Charters.
Hey Dave, John Lee, JL Charters. Got out, I think we only got out once last week. Went cod fishing, black fishing, sea bass. Anchored in 70 feet, and it was kind of a grind. We caught fish, but I anchored 6 times, which I haven't done in a while. Obviously, I can see the benefit of those that have spot lock. It's just a lot of hauling and setting. We got a lot of wind. I'm hoping last year the same thing happened. We had a lot of wind, and then there was a period in December where the weather laid out. I have a trip tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes. Take care. Bye-bye.
Over in South County, the striper fishing's really starting to wind down now. You still get a few fish around the breachways, but most of the guys that are focusing on stripers are fishing up in the ponds, up in the rivers, up in the bays. There's a lot of, sort of satellite holdover populations in that area. And when you get on a good school of fish, you can put you can put some good numbers on the beach. It's just as a hunt and peck game. You got to be willing to put the time in to find the fish. But when you do, the bite can be very good, and that's what these guys are finding over in Rhode. Last thing I'll talk about is just some big largemouth bass again that are being taken in some of the ponds, not too far from the coast, along that same stretch of shoreline. Some nice fish being taken in that area as well, and that's what I have for you guys in Rhode Island this week. Over in Connecticut, especially in the eastern sound, there's not a lot of saltwater fishing going on. There's no blackfish on the menu anymore, and not many guys are leaving their boat in to go chase black sea bass and black sea bass only. So the only saltwater species that are being caught are striped bass, and they're mostly being found up in some of these holdover rivers like the Thames River and up in the coves of the Connecticut River. And there are fish to be had in those regions or in those areas. I have to believe that there are still some bass running along the beaches as well, but I'm just not hearing from anyone who's actually fishing for them. More people are now focusing on trout, salmon, and the great freshwater fishing up in the Connecticut River. The Shetucket seems to be producing better catches this year than it has in the last few. I don't know if it's a mix of factors that are making it more favorable to catch them, or if they put more fish in the river this year. But for whatever reason, we're hearing about more catches than what I typically expect to hear about at this time. Trout fishing, of course, has been great in the Salmon River and the Farmington River. Those are the two that get the most pressure, and attract the most attention. But for good reason. They put out good numbers of fish. Many of the other TMAs and fall stocked ponds are putting out great catches as well. So don't feel like you got to just head for one of those two places. You go on Deep website and check out a place near you that was stocked in the fall, and there's a good chance you're going to find some fish. Up inside the Connecticut River, since Mike Roy has ended the season for Real Cast Charters, I'll tell you what I've heard. Some striped bass up in the coves, nothing crazy so far. But more guys are now focusing on panfish, which has been pretty darn good. A lot of calicos, a lot of yellow perch being taken. Any one of those coves that has a history of producing fish, like Chapman Pond or Hamburg Cove, those ones are all going to be putting out fish right now. And then you've got the guys that are big game hunting. They're up there throwing big shiners and big swim baits, throwing big jerk baits and things of that nature, looking for big pike. And they are finding some. They're finding them there in the coves, and they're finding them up at Haddam Meadows as well. So that's a big, it's a trophy chasing opportunity for anyone that likes to do that kind of fishing. More of the fish are going to be on the smaller side, but the Connecticut River has some monster pike, and there's always that opportunity to that you might run into one, especially if you fish right ahead of a big weather event. Little tip from me there. Heading west from the Connecticut River. Not a lot to talk about out in the Sound until we get kind of in the Milford area. There are some striped bass still hanging out in the Sound out there. These fish are being caught on diamond jigs around the schools of mackerel, around the schools of herring. So if you still got your boat in the water, you can go do that. Most of these fish are going to be around the slot size, but there's always that chance of busting 20 pounds in those schools. And really, you never know what you might find out there, especially with the big bait around. So there's that, and you can also push out and fish some of the deeper structure and probably find some sea bass as well. Big thing, of course, is the Housatonic River. The bite has been good. Guys are getting some bigger fish, especially at night. And the big fish, as I said last week, are typically caught by the guys that are actually targeting them by throwing bigger baits and foregoing a fast action hit to target a bigger fish. And honestly, you might be surprised what you can find up there as far as action goes, even with the bigger baits. There are decent numbers of 10 to 15 pound fish in there, and then there's, surprising numbers of larger fish. Every year I see a fish in the high 30s to low 40 pound range that's caught out of there, all by guys fishing at night. So keep that in mind. Heading west from the Hoosie now, we're going to toss it over now to Max Finch from Fisherman's World.
Hey everyone, Max here with another local fishing report. The striped bass are moving into the Housatonic with force, and guys are catching them upriver and downriver. Your favorite soft plastic on a lead head works best. Guys are also catching on SPs upriver and in the mouth. There's been some herring showing up this past week. I've seen some guys fishing out on their boats, like 28C, 11B, and then we've heard of a good bite at middle ground with bass on herring. There's also some mackerel mixed in. Moving forward into the month, look for the upriver bite to get going. Guys fishing at night always get the bigger fish, but heavy rains get big fish to chew too. Thanks and good luck.
And to wrap up the report, we're going to take a little flight now down to Costa Rica and get a little taste of the action that's going on down at Marina Pez Vela.
Hey there guys, and welcome to the Marina Pez Vela here in Costa Rica with this week's fishing report. The Dorado fishing down here, mahi-mahi, has been absolutely insane. We just caught our biggest Dorado of the season the other day, 56 pound and 71 inches, an absolutely world-class fish. The marlin fishing's been really good as well, mainly blue marlin, a few striped marlin as well, and a few sailfish showing. The tuna bite has been insane also. Lots of tuna in the 30 to 50 class with a few bigger fish also. Would love to see you guys down here in Costa Rica. Come and check us out. Jackpot Sport Fishing. Back to you guys.
And that's what I have for you guys in reports this week. Hopefully you're going to find that useful. I know we're sliding into the holiday season here, but there's still a lot of angling opportunities out there. You also have the possibility of winning something from me, so make sure you take those photos and send them in to me. I appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bill Costa from Massapequa, New York gains points to keep him in 4th place with a 4.55-pound sea bass entry, but not enough to overtake the 3rd place contestant Rob Carazano. Remember, past grand prize winners Sam Dibner and Garrett Weir, who have more points than Rob, are not eligible to win the 1st place prize a second time. So at this time, Rob Carazano is in line for a possible win. We'll see if any additional entries surface by the end of the cutoff date of December 10th. Ahmad Solomon weighed in as 15.1 blackfish for the 4th place blackfish position. More to come as the excitement that is the Dreamboat continues.